Business Law course. Welcome. Sorry for being a few minutes late. For those of you that are not part of my class, you missed out and you should sign up next semester. But I want to welcome you all to this session. So please help me welcome Louis Rossman. We'll do a virtual clap. Louis, do you want to take, I'm happy to do an introduction for you, but do you want to quickly take a minute to introduce yourself to everyone?
Sure. My name is Louis Rossman. I have a repair shop in Manhattan. I started this repair business as kind of a complete accident. I bought something that was broken and I got a discount on it from the seller, so I figured I'll just fix it. When I didn't need it anymore, I sold it. I made $250, and this is the month right after Bernie Madoff got found out and the economy was collapsing, so I thought I usually make $400 a month, and I just made $250 in 20 minutes. Let's try that again. And that kind of turned into a repair business that now employs 15 people. And along the way, I started to figure out why things were as hard as they were, and I started to realize that things weren't as hard as they were in the repair business 40 or 50 or 70 years ago, but that's something that just so happened recently. And over the past 5 or 6 years, more and more people have kind of realized it and have been talking about it. And for some reason, because of the randomness of the internet and algorithms, I'm the person that got the most attention for talking about it. So that turned into a thing called the Right to Repair movement, which is what I was here to discuss. And also,
Yeah,
my cat
awesome.
Blackberry is sitting on my lap. She always tries to distract me when I'm doing a video. And the moment she sees I'm using the mic, she'll start nuzzling it. So you'll probably hear static. If you do, it's probably her.
Awesome. Awesome. So what we'll try to do in the next like 40 minutes or so is have this healthy discussion and discourse about right to repair. My advice to everyone is, first of all, please stay muted, but please have your cameras on, because again, I think it's helpful to just see everyone's reactions on a single screen. But if you have questions as we're discussing, please post those questions. I just want to make it clear up front, like what my bias is, and I'm absolutely for right to repair. But what I want to do during this discussion is, understand, what is right to repair, help you understand what's right to repair, why is it important. I'm going to do my part as best as I can to play devil's advocate and see how well Louis can, stay true to his arguments and viewpoints. And again, if there's anything you want to have me elaborate on or ask questions to Louis, please make it a point to ask those questions in the chat, and we will ask away. So, first question to you, Louis, is, high level, you gave us a quick overview of, what is right to repair. I guess the second question is like, why is it important and why should we care?
I think people should care because it's about property ownership. If you're not able to repair the devices that you own, then you don't really own them. You're leasing them, and you're part of a society where everything is based on a subscription model. And I don't think people are always aware of that up front when they buy something, that they don't really own it. So for just, some basic examples. One of the most common problems that a device will come into my store for is this little $5 charging chip dies on the motherboard. And, when I was a kid, I feel old with this, but all the stuff that I used came with like AA batteries, AAA batteries. There was no charging. It was just, you spent 50 cents or whatever on new batteries once every couple of weeks and you were good. And now there's a rechargeable battery, and it's not a standard battery and it's not a standard charging circuit. So the way that you fix this when this dies is you bring it to a repair shop and they replace the chip. The problem is now you're not able to do that because the company that makes the device will tell the company that makes that charging chip, don't sell that to anybody. Just don't sell that to anybody. So I will not be able to fix that device that's $2,000 with a $5 problem. The manufacturer will tell you, yeah, we can fix it. It's $1,500. It'll take 1 or 2 weeks and you'll lose all your data. And a lot of people really do care about this as an issue after they've been screwed. But a lot of people don't realize it until the moment that they have been screwed. And this is something that people will often come to me and say, well, if you don't like it, just don't buy Apple. And well, point taken. This is something that's happening with many medical device manufacturers, operating tables, cars, tractors, appliances, washing machines. So it's something that's kind of like spread like a cancer to every single corner of the culture. And I think if nobody does something now, I think we are kind of too late because many manufacturers are doing this. But if we wait any longer, we'll wake up in a society where we really just don't own anything.
All right. So you brought up a few good points, and let's kind of like dissect each and every point that you brought up and like kind of spend more time on it. So the first point is like you're absolutely right. Like the consumer has the freedom of choice, and I'm guilty of having an iPhone. I shouldn't say guilty. I like having an iPhone, but but yeah, it's frustrating, right? Like if I want to update or change the battery, I can't do it. Apple has engineered this iPhone where I can't do it. I think we can all agree to that. And I would have to go to someone like you or to those random cell phone kiosks in the mall or whatever, right, to replace the battery. That being said, doesn't the manufacturer like Apple also have the freedom of choice to design their products the way that they want?
I believe they have the freedom of choice to design it the way they want with regards to we want to make it thinner. So the way we're going to make it thinner and liquid resistant is we're going to glue everything into the phone. I don't think that right to repair should be about making my life easier by making devices that anybody can repair. It's my job to figure out how to deal with it when you glue the device together. It's my job to figure out how do you replace a screen when they glue the screen in instead of screw the screen in. But when area where right to repair would come in is when the manufacturer goes over to LG and says, "Oh yeah, just don't sell the screen to anybody. Like, don't make sure nobody else can buy this, so that even if they have the know-how on how to fix their own device, they're stuck only going to us." Now, this is an interesting area where I think it goes into tying law, where in order to get one thing, you have to buy another thing from the manufacturer. So you're tying the service. You cannot get this part unless you also buy this service from us. Now, with tying law, this typically only comes into play when you have a certain percentage of the market. So it's difficult to say that one company has 30 or 50 or 60% of the market. And the argument that I make is that if every company is doing it, then you have, let's say, 80 or 90 or 95% of the companies doing it, that you do have the basis for a tying claim where you'll be able to say that most manufacturers are saying you can't get access to something that we used to be able to get access to for over 100 years because, unless you buy this particular service from us. And that service just so happens to cost 90% the cost of a new device.
So, the other argument, outside of like the freedom of choice of the manufacturer, it's also about, security and IP protection. And I'm thinking about like my time, and I was also, for your benefit, Lewis, and for everyone else, like I was also a student of City College many, many years ago, and I wrote this paper about modding the Xbox. And I still have the Xbox because I want my kids to play with it one day, where I modded it, re-engineered it, and basically now this Xbox can now play Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, Atari games. Awesome. And it's obviously IP infringement on some level, right? Or on a lot of levels. Doesn't the manufacturer have the duty to build in the security that they need to build in? And if that results in the inability to repair the device, like that's maybe a consequence of just better security, tighter security.
Well, one interesting thing you bring up, I remember this because I used to modify consoles to play copied games back in the late 90s. That was the first of my soldering experiences, which were, in many cases, admittedly less than successful. And I think an important thing to bring up there is that was going on be without a right to repair. All of the piracy that you see going on right now, all the ability to get video games on torrent websites and Usenet and Share Reactor, I guess I'm showing my age by saying Share Reactor, are these all existed prior to right to repair. So the ability to know what the value is of a resistor that's on a board, the ability to purchase a fan, is not something that's going to make it less secure. And when it comes to whether or not there is any evidence that the ability to have access to repair documentation will make it less secure, the FTC actually released a report today on a 2019 workshop called Nixing the Fix, and it says the record contains no empirical evidence to suggest that independent repair shops are more than less likely to then authorize repair shops to compromise or misuse customer data. So usually when they say that that there's a security risk, they're saying that we are going to be able to hack into their data. But the evidence doesn't say that that actually occurs. If someone has a device and they bring it to us and it has a passcode on it and it's encrypted, I'm not going to be able to get into that just because I have the schematic that says what the value of a resistor is on the board.
So that I get, and I don't think if anyone, I don't think it's like a debate. I know there are debates out there, but I'll just admit like there shouldn't be a debate. Like if you're taking your phone to get repaired to with a third party repair service, like they would want to or should be able to like hack into your phone and grab your data. But like if I own this phone and I want to re-engineer this phone, why is it blurred? That's so weird. Okay. If I want to re-engineer this phone so it becomes a Nintendo emulator, and clearly Apple does not want to let me do that. Um, you know, is that an issue or should it be an issue, right?
Well,
Again, like making the device as like unrepairable as possible for the sake of product security.
Well, in that case, I find it difficult to be able to draw a line between you are able to buy a charging chip so that if it stops charging, you can then fix the product, and that having an issue with security. And one of the areas where I've always been confused is when an opposition, and the opposition will make the argument that this bill hurts device security, and I say, what in the schematic will hurt device security? What will I get access to with this that I don't have access to? I never get an answer. So I'm very open and curious to how it is having access to that would hurt the device security. Now, if we were asking for source code, we wanted the ability to have a copy of the source code of the device. That could be a different conversation altogether. But none of the bills that are out there have ever requested source code, in spite of a lot of what the opposition typically claims. So I find it difficult to draw a direct line between I know that this is a 10 kilo ohm resistor versus a 100 kilo ohm resistor, and I can now hack an iPhone to become a Nintendo emulator. Because I have schematics for the iPhone. Eventually, they always eventually wind up getting leaked a few months after release anyway, and I have no idea how to turn it into a Nintendo emulator. So
Interesting. Do you think it opens up a can of worms though, right? Because once you have like the right to repair from a hardware perspective, then it's only a matter of time. Like I have the right to repair from a software perspective. Because for example, I can't think of the ebook right now, but maybe it was from Amazon or somewhere else, right? Everybody bought all these ebooks for this like ebook hardware device, and then eventually the provider of that ebook hardware went bankrupt or bust or whatever, and all the ebooks were lost along with it. And one could argue like I should have the right not only to repair the hardware but the software so I can maintain its functionality, its features, its value, because the hardware is basically nothing without the software. And if the software is broken for whatever reason, shouldn't I also have the right to repair the software to make the hardware work as well?
what would we call repairing the software in this particular case? Hey, would that be having access to source code, or would that be something else?
I mean, you can make two arguments, right? It's like either having access to the original code, right, to whatever you want to call it, apply it back to the original state of the device, or yeah, you could argue like having access to the original source code because like there. I don't know if you saw this John Deere video. It was about Vice and John Deere, and there was this farmer, and he was saying like about this GPS device that John Deere no longer supports, but the GPS device works just fine, right? And if he had the right to, quote unquote, repair the software, he can make it work with the original hardware, and it would just
That's a
work
good
just
one.
fine.
So
Yeah,
what he's looking for there is are payload files and binaries. That's not source code. So a trade secret would be what the code is within that binary. I imagine that would be source code. He is simply looking for a payload file or a binary file, which is kind of like firmware. This is not something that allows you to see the source code, nor is it something that would compromise security. It's like a firmware file that you download for your printer from HP. You could download a firmware file for your printer, and that doesn't mean that you're then going to be able to hack the printer or do something evil to the printer. It just allows you to be able to use the device again.
got it. But do you ever see like an argument or a need to actually access the software or the source code itself to whether because it's yours and you want to tweak it to make it do something different, or just to make the actual hardware work? because for whatever reason it was dependent maybe on something else and it broke.
I could potentially see an argument for that if you have let's say if you have a device that's, I don't know, it's hard coded to check a certain IP address or a certain website or something like that, and it doesn't allow you to adjust it. We have a lot of devices that are dependent on being able to connect to something. Someone just sent me a link today to an article about an airbag vest that if you stop paying the manufacturer, the airbag stops working. So let's say that I don't know, let's say that they stop issuing updates to this, but then they use a different provider. You have an airbag vest, but you have no ability to actually allow it to use its function without it connecting to a specific server. There could be an argument made that if you want to be able to repair devices like that you would need access to source code. But that's not something that I've asked for or fit into right to repair in this instance.
Got it. All right, there's some questions coming up, and it's probably a good time to talk about some of them. So,
trade secrets?
One student, yeah, what about trade secrets and reverse engineering issues?
That's a good one. So when it comes to reverse engineering and trade secrets, the first thing I would go for is that usually copyright gets brought up before trade secret. Trade secrets would be, how do you actually assemble this? So this is something when it comes to when we're asking for a schematic or a board view. What does that mean? So when we are asking for a board view file, we're looking for top layer, bottom layer, name of component, not here's the width of the trace. Here's the path it takes inside the board. Here are the materials that are used for it. So I think there can be misunderstanding there where people assume what we're asking for is the file that we just go over to a manufacturer and say, make me a MacBook, and they look at what we gave them and they go, okay, yeah, that'll be done by tomorrow. Rather than asking for essentially the bare minimum. So for instance, when you buy a MacBook, you have access to the top and the bottom layer of the board already. So I don't consider that to be a trade secret, because it's actually it's a representation of the thing that is already in front of you in a different form. Now, the argument there would be more so copyright rather than trade secret, because it's not a secret, since, again, you can measure this stuff with a multimeter and see where it all goes. Now, when it comes to copyright, there have been some interesting cases that have been done in the past with regards to this, and the two of the ones that I found the most interesting were, one was Southco versus Cambridge. Cambridge was a company that was selling spare parts, and they were using the exact same part numbers that the manufacturer was using. They claimed that the part numbers in the list were all copyrighted, so you can't do that. Cambridge said, well, we need to use your part number so that the customer knows when they're searching for the part to replace that this one that we're making is compatible. And the court said that you couldn't copyright the part numbers. It said that you must possess at least some minimal degree of creativity, and that there is a narrow category of works in which the creative spark is so utterly lacking or trivial as to be virtually non-existent. They concluded that Southco's part numbers fit within that narrow category of works that are incapable of sustaining a valid copyright ID. A similar case was ATC Distribution Group versus Whatever It Takes Transmission Parts. This guy was working for some transmission parts company. I guess he said at some point, screw it, I want to work for myself. He started his own company. He was selling parts and he was using the same parts lists. And the exact same thing happened. There's repeated exemptions when it comes to copyright law with regards to repair, where you can't say that this document that says how you can't apply copyright protection to a list of parts, or here's a list of resistors, or here is a drawing that represents the value of components that you can measure that are already in front of you.
Let's jump to this question from Dylan. Let's say there is a good security reason for Apple to tie the serial number of a fingerprint sensor to the motherboard. Should Apple be forced to provide software to pair a new fingerprint sensor to the motherboard?
If we're talking about the ability to replace something, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go. I was gonna say this was probably related to a comment you made about having a specific chip tied to that overall device, and if that chip broke for whatever reason and you try to replace it, it still wouldn't work because the device is paired to that specific chip based on a serial number or whatever the unique identifier is.
I think if you're going to create a device where one component is paired to another, it shouldn't be set up where the manufacturer is the only one that's able to do the repairing of a home button. If you want to pair your a different home button to your device, and while you're doing it, you bought a home button from, I don't know, Vladimir Putin, and you're the opposition party or whatever, and it hacks your phone. That's part of the risk that you take when you're choosing to fix your own device. And I don't think that serializing, where you're not able to replace something in your device without the manufacturer's permission, is something that's going to be good for society.
Dylan, did I answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
All right. Next question from Giancarlo. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right. Do you think, oh, he's shaking his head, yes. All right, awesome. Do you think that companies in the medical field, which have extreme niches, I'm guessing, he's referring to like some medical device company that makes like pacemakers or something, should they have the right to not allow repair on items that are extremely specialized or fragile, or,
Well,
have
there are
that type
different
of risk
classifications to this, and I'm only now being introduced to the different classifications when it comes to medical devices. I spoke to someone about this 2.5 weeks ago. You have stuff like like a motor and an operating table, like it's just to be able to make you do this versus this, and then you have advanced robots that are being used as part of robotic surgery. And there are, he said, I will replace the motor in the operating table so it can do this. I ain't touching the robot. So there are going to be limitations on certain things, and I think that is probably covered by certain laws regarding liability when it comes to medical devices and who's allowed to work on them. Like I know legally speaking, I can't do open heart surgery. If I got caught doing open heart surgery, that's against the law because I'm a MacBook repair person. And but I think we've swung way too far in the other direction, which is when the recline feature in your operating table dies, you have to pay $40,000 to replace it. Now, so I will admit that when it comes to medical devices, I don't know all the different specific tiers, but I do know at the very least that there are those 3 tiers, and you have stuff that you should only have a certain sub-select people work on, and stuff that virtually anybody should be able to work on if they have technical proficiency with that device.
So on the topic of medical devices, like it feels like everything's a medical device now. And again, please don't quote me on this, but I feel like the next like version of the Apple Watch that's coming out, like not only is it a medical device from the perspective of like measuring like your oxygen and your blood and your blood pressure and heartbeat, but like now it's getting to the point where it can like measure your blood sugar level, like weird stuff like that. So like, does that like classify like that device, and I'm assuming maybe sometime in the future your Apple phone will be able to do that too, like use your fingerprint to log into your device, but it also checks your blood sugar level or whatever, and it's basically becomes a medical device from that perspective. Like things are getting gray pretty quickly, right? Where you have like one device that can do many different things. So is an iPhone a medical device? If I can use my pacemaker to, query something on Google, like via Siri or whatever, right? Like, is it actually a medical device from that perspective? Like, how do we draw the line?
That's a good question. I think I would draw the line when you get to the point at which the device is relied on for professional medical use. I mean, there's having the camera that you have in, let's say, a Sidekick phone in 2004, and then there's a Nikon DSLR. There's having your phone tell you what your heart rate is, and then there is having a phone that can do open heart surgery kind of thing. And I still think you would have to have some sort of tiered system there when it comes to restrictions on repair, where you would be restricting the repairs on like the robot that is doing surgery on you, not the thing that says this is your pulse. Because there's a lower cost if your device is telling you your pulse. There's a lower area of there's less risk, and you fix the device that's supposed to tell you what your pulse is, and it tells you your pulse is 0. The function stops working because you fix it and screw it up, and a robot that is removing your heart while surgeons watch it happen. Okay.
So your audience here, they're all engineering students, undergrad, graduate students, specializing in computer engineering, electrical engineering, biomedical. Environmental engineering seems really popular right now, which I love because I'm a big believer of, we got to address freaking climate change yesterday. what do you think is the engineer's responsibility? Because I'm really hoping everybody here gets employment, and we have a lot of alumni that get picked up at Google, at Facebook, Apple, but also a lot of other companies, right? I don't want to knock anyone just because I didn't name them. Um, like, what is the engineer's responsibility, whether they're either interviewing or fully employed? Because it's going to come up, right? It wasn't, I forgot who the former CEO of Apple was, but it wasn't him that like designed the iPhone. It was, tens, if not hundreds of engineers that built it, right? So like, what's the engineer's role in all of this at the end of the day?
That reminds me of that Bill Burr skit where they go, well, he comes out saying I made this. No, you didn't. You ate a pear while someone else was
Right.
doing it. But yeah, so the I think one of the things that I try to do with this YouTube channel is when I was doing board repair videos and the live streams of all of it, is instead of having it be some 90-second edit that said go to our site if you want to repair at the end, is I tried to have a human element to it so people would want to watch and find it interesting or fun. And if anybody got into engineering watching that, I think they'd remember I got into this. I got my degree in this. I went to school because I thought it was cool to watch someone solder on a board, and they're going to remember that. And when the company they work for says, just tell Intersil, by the way, to not sell this to anybody else, that they're not going to want to be a part of that. There's going to be some sort of natural pushback. And I think the best way I can probably compare and contrast this, it's kind of like if people who grew up in this generation eventually become prosecutors, and across their desk it just shows up, person was caught with 10 grams of marijuana on them. It's like the law says prosecute, but they're not really going to want to do it. That's going to be at the bottom of the pile. That's going to be something that they don't really care about. And eventually it's just going to fade away as a law because they grew up in a world where they realized, my friend used this, or my neighbor used this, and he was not a psychotic murderer after it like my parents told me. So what I hope happens is that people just fundamentally reject being a part of anti-repair processes when they become engineers at these businesses, that they think about this, that they say, you know what, I'm not going to do that. And it's going to be up to the people that are in those positions. Do I want to push that? Do I want to push here? Do I want to figure out if I lose an opportunity to advance in my career here? Do I want to figure out if I'm going to get fired if I say no to this? I can't really answer that question for people, but I'm trying to plant a seed in their head, because I don't think that the next generation that gets excited about this because they started off, like watching me, curses I'm reballing an SMC because I can't buy one with firmware on it already. I don't think they're going to want to be the person that's responsible for me having to reball that chip off of a donor board and figure out it's dead because the company they work for didn't release the firmware. So I think it's going to be on the people that do work on these devices, that do make these devices, to be a part and say, no, I'm not doing that. Or if you're writing a piece of code that is designed to make sure that this specific screen has this specific serial number, and that this is not going to speak, this screen is not going to work unless there's a handshake and it sees that the serial code matches, that you just, instead of just writing it, you go, why are we doing that? Wait, what? Why are we doing that? What's the purpose behind this? Why? And you see that there's a lot of companies right now, for many reasons, one way or another, they may not even believe the things they're saying politically, but they believe that it's important for them to project at least the image of not being evil to the community, to their employees, to their constituents. And I think that right to repair is going to be a part of that. But it's not. It's only going to happen if the people that got into this care about it and push back.
Yeah. So how does an engineer push back? Like if Zoya, I'm gonna pick on you, Zoya, gets employed at Apple tomorrow, like what should she do or shouldn't do, right, to drive that change? And by the way, is it, and on a follow to that, like, do you think enough engineers, or do you think Apple as a company could ever get to the point where that mentality changes, where they are thinking about the aspect of repairability as they design and build and engineer the next set of devices in their portfolio?
I think it's totally possible because I forget if it was late 2018 or late 2019, but when they were doing the House and Senate Judiciary Committees where Apple was giving testimony, and when they were doing discovery, they found emails back and forth where they were saying, so how do we respond to this? what is our policy when it comes to right to repair and things like that. So they haven't really even cemented it, which gives me hope, because that means that the anti-repair practices that have taken place are things that have happened like that may be limited to a small number of people behind closed doors, where it's not like they write on a chalkboard somewhere, this device will not be repairable. Make sure parts are not repairable. So it may be a very small number of people that are actually responsible for that. So I think it is possible, if enough people speak up and say, why is it like this? We don't think this is fair. We don't think this is good for our customers. We don't think this is good for our image. We don't want to be a part of this, for that to change.
Before I jump from this topic, any questions from everyone here as it relates to like engineering ethics and repairability? And I guess while we're waiting for some of them to come in, let's go and scroll up. This is an interesting one. I don't know what Joshua was saying. Maybe you have the context. If this bill is passed into law, won't it eventually take legitimate jobs away from licensed repair technicians who depend on repairing gadgets for a living?
Well, the people, when we say licensed, what do we mean? Do we mean authorized by the manufacturer, or do we mean licensed as in they have a license from the Department of Consumer Affairs? Because many third-party repair shops are already licensed by the Department of Consumer Affairs, even if they're not authorized by the manufacturer. Now, when we talk about authorized by the manufacturer, I think that the word repair there needs to be a bit clarified, because a lot of what happens with the manufacturer is not actually repair. So, for instance, I did this video 4 or 5 years ago where I called up a bunch of different Apple authorized centers, and I just asked them basic questions. If you have a bad charging port in your iPhone 6, they don't fix the charging port. What they do is they take your iPhone, they take $350, they mail it back to Apple, and then they have Apple mail them a refurbished iPhone that's not yours, and they charge you $350 for that. That's not actually repair. And a lot of people who are authorized for the manufacturer have expressed agitation to me that they really would like to actually be able to fix devices, but they don't. They're swapping. It's kind of like a pawn shop. Like, I'll give me this and some money, and I'll give you someone else's. So I don't think that it would close the opportunity for licensed repair shops. Rather, I think it would allow those people who are authorized by the manufacturer but hate the fact that they're so limited in the repairs that they can do to join us in actually fixing things, and likely add a lot to their bottom line. Because I've seen that there is 3 or 4 Apple authorized places within about 2 miles of me that have closed in the past 13 years. And I think the reason they closed is because it's just not profitable to tell somebody it's going to take 2 weeks and $350, and you lose all your data because of a charge port.
Are you saying they went out of business because they couldn't repair it, or because they were partnered with Apple and it?
I think they go out of business because it's such a horrible proposition for the customer that nobody wants to pay for it. If I say I will buy this charge port for $5 and I'll replace it for $45 or $50, that makes a happy customer. If you go to the authorized place and they say, we can't replace that because Apple won't sell us this part, we're not allowed to buy the parts that Lewis does, so all I can do is take your phone, send it back to Apple's recycling center, and give you a refurbished phone that's not yours for $350. That'll take 2 weeks, and you won't have your data. That proposition is such a losing one for the customer that the authorized repair centers are very quickly fading away because nobody wants to do that.
I guess on that note, Eric asks the question, would you be opposed to Apple creating a certification program which allows them to take a commission on repairs similar to the current antitrust lawsuit regarding App Store purchases? I don't know what you're referring to on that.
Are you referring to, let's say, a franchise agreement, like let's say CPR, where you open a store under their branding and they take a certain percentage of your net profit each year? If the arrangement were such that it made sense, and so I know that's a hypothetical, but since this is if it made sense, it would depend on the percentage arrangement, and it would depend on what it is that we get access to. Because, I mean, I personally don't like that I have to wire, if I want to buy screens, that someone says it'll be $70,000 minimum order. I don't know who they are, and I don't know when I send that wire transfer if what I get, if I'm, going to get a box of chocolates, or I'm actually going to get, 1 or 2 thousand screens that from LG, it would be beneficial to have a partner that actually works with me, but it would depend on what the relationship is. If it's anything even remotely similar to the IRP program, I would say no, because you don't actually get access to most of the things. So right now, if you become Apple authorized, if you go through their IRP program and every step, jump through all the hoops, pay all the money, you still can't buy the parts and stuff that I need. So it would really depend on the terms.
I think design for easy accessibility for maintenance is a must for any ethical and decent engineer. Apple has 1.5 billion active devices as of 2020. Do you think Apple has enough workforce to fix all those 1.5 billion active devices?
Let's see. I don't know if they have enough workforce to fix all those devices, and I don't want to make it Apple's responsibility or any company's responsibility to do all the repairs. What we're asking for is for them to stop putting gates in front of us and what it is we need to fix what is out there. So I don't know how many devices out there actually do break. I don't have that statistic. I would doubt that Apple has the personnel to be able to fix all of them. I would doubt that, honestly, Apple plus every independent repair center in the world combined would have enough resources to fix all of them. But when it comes to easily accessibility for maintenance, obviously it would be my preference that my phone have a removable battery. I would prefer that it would be easy to fix. I mean, obviously I have my bias there because I'm a repair person. I'd like everything to be easy, but I'm not mandating that they make it easy. I want to mandate the bare minimum necessary that we are able to do our job if we're willing to put in the work to do so. So I don't want to mandate that you use only one type of screw throughout the device. I don't want to mandate no glue, this is the size, because that's a dangerous road to go down because, like, for instance, the CPU is soldered onto the board. Why not socket it? I mean, why not have it be through-hole soldered and then socket it so you could just pop it out if something goes wrong? I mean, if we do this, you have a phone that's this thick, but it would make it easier for me to repair. It would be easier to do data recovery by far. So I haven't gone down that road because it's an easy way for it to become legislation that is very difficult to follow because it's very subjective what is easy to repair and what is hard to repair. There are people that think replacing an inverter board on an A1181 is hard. There are people that think replacing a LED driver chip that's micro BGA and running a wire under it is easy. So who would define that? But if you make a requirement that don't tell the company that makes the charging chip for the phone that they can't sell to me, that's easy to comply with because it's objective. It's not something that would be subjective. But I agree with you that design for easy accessibility is definitely a preference of mine. Obviously, I don't know how to legislate that in a manner where it doesn't become a mess, so I've decided to not go down that road. But yeah, if you become an
What do
engineer
you
and want to
think?
use less glue, by all means, I won't be mad at you.
Yeah, I don't know why engineers are using glue, because they don't teach that at engineering school. But in terms of future state, like what does the ideal future state look like? If Apple or any other company, I know it's fun to pick on Apple, but let's just say whoever, right, was thinking about the repairability of their devices, so that either the consumer or the independent repair shop can do it. Like, what does that future state look like? What does that relationship look like between the manufacturer and the consumer, or the manufacturer and the independent repair shop? What do you think is the responsibility or the duty of the manufacturer to that independent repair shop, in terms of like, hey, you need XYZ in order to do your job effectively? Like, what do you think the future state of that in a perfect world looks like?
I think it would be not having an adversarial relationship with people who do repair. Right now, everything stems down to the fact that there's an adversarial relationship between independent repair and the manufacturer. And part of not having that adversarial relationship is for the gateway drug for people who become engineers to be repair, to be people who got into this because they were repair people. So that once they are engineers, board members, management at these businesses, they just kind of feel dirty at the idea of having an adversarial relationship with the people who want to maintain their products because they used to be someone who maintains these types of products. So I think once you get rid of the adversarial relationship, everything else goes away. Because I was discussing this with one of the people who we were drafting the bill with, a lobbyist and an attorney, and we're up at 1 or 2 in the morning trying to figure out exactly how to word it so it's fair to us and fair to them. Because I do want to create something that's actually fair to them. That's why I'm not trying to legislate the way in which you design the device. What we're trying to legislate, for lack of a better way to put it, is how to not be an asshole. And that's an incredibly difficult thing to do. You can have one basic value, and in absence of that value, you wind up creating thousands of little sub-rules to try and just go back to that one value of just don't be an asshole. Don't tell the company that makes the chip that that dies more often than everything else in the device, don't sell it to us, and then charge the consumer 80% the cost of the device to replace the whole thing and lose their data when that dies.
I think
I like Arvis's question.
I'll get to Arvis's question, but Ivan made this comment about profit margins, right? And when companies are trying to build and forecast their revenue, eventually they have to think about, okay, I have the iPhone XR, so I'm sure they thought, okay, like Tom Cheriyan is going to keep this for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and at some point in time, it's going to become old, however we want to define old to be. And in a perfect world, Tom is buying the latest and greatest iPhone. So, isn't there this argument just let the product die? Especially in the case where iPhone, Apple and other companies, they want to be able to sell their consumers new products, right? The latest and greatest product.
Well,
yeah.
Scott Galloway went over this very well. He says if you have a subscription model, if you can turn from selling a product to having a subscription, or you create the recurring revenue bundle, otherwise known as the rundle, you will trade at a much higher PE. So even if your company is bringing in the exact same amount of money, even if they have the exact same net profit, once you have the recurring revenue bundle, your company is instantly worth more money. So I think that's a big part of it. And that's why I talk about this in terms of property ownership, not in terms of repair, because if they can get you to just get another one every 2 or 3 or 4 years, before the money even starts flowing in, the company starts trading at a higher PE, higher market cap because of that practice. So that's part of what makes it so appealing, to make it so that you don't really own what you buy.
Do you think repair then, from that perspective, right to repair becomes like a moot argument where everything becomes a subscription?
It becomes a moot argument if the trend continues that recurring revenue bundles are the only path to trading at a higher PE. I think that being able to buy something where it doesn't matter where you are in the world, if something goes wrong with it, you can have it serviced, particularly if you're selling something that could be mission critical. And everybody thinks of their phone as mission critical since it has their data on it, people that use their laptops for filming and all of that. If you're able, I am curious, if you sell something with the concept that this specifically is going to be easy to maintain and you're going to be capable to maintain it, does that result in a higher PE as opposed to just having just milking the customer every 1 or 2 years?
I think forget the PEE argument for a second, but if I agree to subscribe to the, let's say, iPhone subscription, and part of that relationship then is every year I get a new phone, and if my phone breaks or whatever, they mail me a new one because I'm now a subscriber, and all my data is essentially backed up to the Apple cloud, so there isn't really this risk or issue of data loss because it's all backed up somewhere else outside the phone. As a consumer, I'm no longer really stressed about repairing it.
There are definitely a lot of people
that would.
There are a lot of people that like that model. That's why car leases are popular. I've done the math on car leases and I thought they're insane, but a lot of people like the idea of, in 3 years, I don't have to worry about any maintenance for this. and in 3 years I will just trade it in for another one. There's most certainly going to be consumers that prefer that model. It's just a question of whether every consumer wants that model. And right now, if you create devices that are unfixable, then you're pushing the leasing model on consumers, even if they're buying it. And I think that's where it causes conflict. But most certainly, there are going to be people out there that don't care about repair whatsoever. They'll only have a device within the warranty period, and they're happy to buy a new one happy to have a new one on a subscription service every year or two. The one area where that would counter that argument would be when something happens that the consumer does that voids their warranty. So, for instance, if you're leasing a car and it starts making a noise and stops working, that's on the company you leased it from. But if you're leasing a car and you crash it into a wall or something, now that's on you and your insurance company to deal with. And so if you have a subscription service for your phone and you get it in water or you smash it, the company, even if you are on a subscription service, may think, well, we're not covering that the same way we are if it just randomly stopped working.
Got it. To Arbaz's question, Mr. Rossman. I don't know if you like being called Mr. Rossman, by the way. I always get irked when somebody calls me Mr. Cheriyan. In your opinion, what is the strongest argument against right to repair, if you think there are any?
Oh, there's a very strong argument against right to repair. It's the best one, and I've never heard it said out loud because it would be too honest. The best argument against right to repair is that in America, it's not safety and security, because nobody can give instances of safety or security being harmed through repair. It's not about the repairs being done improperly, because there's tons of examples of the manufacturer doing the repairs improperly, and I show them on my channel on a regular basis. The true argument against right to repair is that in the United States of America, you have the right to be an asshole. Not making your device, like going over to Texas Instruments and saying, hey, if someone wants this charge chip, don't sell it to them so that they have to come back to us and pay $1,500 instead of have a $5 chip replaced by a repair shop. That's being an asshole. In America, you have the right to be an asshole. I can cheat on my girlfriend. It's not nice, but I can do it. If someone's walking down on the street, I can look at them and go ugly. Again, that's not nice, but I can do it. At the end of the day, what I said is we're trying to legislate, don't be an asshole. And in America, you have the right to be an asshole. And that's the one argument that, from a principled point of view, I could at the very least say, okay, I respect your argument. I don't respect a lot of the opposition arguments because they say it's unsafe. The microwaves, the magnetrometer in the microwave is going to blow up. There's not even a such thing as a magnetrometer in a microwave. They say that, I'm going to hack your phone and install TikTok on it. Like, if your phone is a password, I can't get into it to install anything. So that's ridiculous. They're going to talk about how unsafe it is for me to, do basic soldering. It's all garbage. The best argument against right to repair by far is you have the right to be an asshole. And no company is going to ever say that out loud because it's such horrible PR, even though it's the actual truth. And I would respect it so much more.
Okay. I actually like that argument. Which is, I think, how we started the interview, right? Like, not that they have the right to be an asshole, but they have the right to choose the ability to make their devices repairable or not.
Yeah.
Trying to think.
There's some good questions here.
Which one do you see
have
that's
a good class. I like it. What's stopping the repair people from being assholes and overcharging consumers for repairing? The person down the street who will do it cheaper and get better ratings than me if I rip off the customer. There's a bunch of places that I thought used to charge too much in my area, and they just don't exist anymore. Like Portatronics is gone, TechServe is gone. I actually registered the website in 2008, way less than TechServe.com.
I didn't know TechServe was gone. I thought they were like a staple in Manhattan.
They went away, I think, 4 or 5 years ago.
Interesting. That was Eli John. Okay, good job, Eli John. He's in my class. Do manufacturers have, this is good because we have a lot of environmental engineers here. Do manufacturers have an environmental responsibility to make devices repairable?
To the degree that you believe that the manufacturer has a responsibility for what they put out there into the world, I think so.
I'm not seeing any other additional questions. I mean, does anybody want to jump in and have it like go off mute and ask Lewis any additional questions or share any additional thoughts?
Yes, please.
Yeah, go ahead, Ahmed.
Hi, I'm Ahmed, one of the students from the class. I just wanted to ask, why can't Apple just be like apologize? Oh, we're sorry, we can't provide you with what you're asking for, but you got Android, down there. They could probably help you out.
It's a good question. The question is, I think, tell me if I'm misphrasing it, is why, if you have an issue with the way Apple does business, why not just don't buy Apple, use someone else's device? The issue there is if I want, let's say I want to be able to get a schematic. So I'm a hypocrite here because I use an LG phone, and if I want a schematic, I can't get one from LG. But I also can't get a schematic for a Samsung phone. I can't get a schematic for a OnePlus phone. I can't get a schematic for an Essential phone. I can't get a schematic for a Google phone. So if I want to use a phone that is compatible with the networks here, where I have a schematic to it, I'm probably going to be using something that has a cord attached to it, and that does this. Because the issue at this point is that every company does this in some way. So I speak about Apple because I work on their products and I can bring up specific examples. So I'm not speaking in overly general terms where I say they're not friendly to repair. I can say when they started using an ISL 9240 for charging, they told Renesas Intersil not to sell to us, and here is a form letter showing Intersil telling me that. But every company does this in some way, shape, or form now.
Great question, Ahmed.
It's a good
Other
question.
questions?
I have a question about the bill which you've written.
Go for it.
I'm just wondering, does the bill include kind of like retroactive, like right to repair, like things that have already been designed this way, they would be required to like make them repairable or to lift those whatever restrictions?
The current bill that exists in the legislature does not specify that. That is a question we have had for the 2022 session. So if I do a direct ballot initiative, we would have a chance to rewrite it. And that has been a question of ongoing debate. Do we apply this only to devices going forward or to devices backwards? But for the bills that exist in the 17 plus states right now, it doesn't say.
Do you want to spend a minute or two, Lewis, just talking about the bill that you're currently working on and like what you're trying to do with the right to repair movement?
Yeah, so the bill says to make available to independent repair shops and individuals the parts that are made available to the authorized service centers. One of my concerns there is one of the areas of language where I'd want clarity is, again, as I said, there's two different repair. There's the actual person that does repair at the manufacturer, and then there's the authorized repair center where they're for most intents and purposes, they're a mailing forwarder. They just take the device and send it off to the person who actually does it. So the bill pretty much outlines what I've talked about here, which is make available parts and schematics that you make available to the authorized repair center, not to manufacturing, but to the repair center, so that they are able to do their job. It doesn't specify whether the company itself has to sell the part or whether you just don't tell the manufacturer like LG or Intersil that they're not allowed to sell to us. It's a distinction that I don't care who does that. I'm not saying that Apple has to sell an LG screen. Just don't tell LG they can't sell the screen to me. So it would make parts available, schematics and diagrams available to independent servicers.
Catalina, who's in my class, and you get bonus points for asking this question, asks, what effect will approval of right to repair in one state will have on the entire country? She's not from the US, so she doesn't actually understand how this works.
That depends on what the market is in that state. If you get it if this is passed by, I'm not looking to make moral judgments here or anything, but if it gets passed by a tiny city in Wyoming, that's different than if it gets passed by the state of Florida, New York, or Massachusetts, or California. If the bill is passed in a large enough market, It changes the way the company does business. When the automotive right to repair was passed in 2012 and 2020, we didn't have a world where you could only fix your car in the state of Massachusetts. They just stopped being dicks in every other state besides Massachusetts. So if you're able to buy a part in one state, even if they were to be so petty as to say we will only allow parts to be sold to an individual in that state, whoever actually buys the part in that state would then, that state would likely be a state that has many wholesale part suppliers that would sell to the rest of the world. So the parts would be made available. I don't think we live in a world where you can make a schematic available in only one state. That just doesn't exist. So if it gets made available in that state, you would then have to make the decision, do we stop selling in that state, or do we just finally become repair friendly because it's what our customers and the greater world actually wants? And what seemed to happen with automotive is they just changed the way they did business throughout the country once it was passed in one state. So if it's passed in a state that's a large enough market that actually has the an attorney general that's willing to put the teeth in and enforce it, I think it would change things all around the world.
I'm gonna mispronounce his name or her name, Badri. But they ask, is it better to pitch right to repair as an environmentally beneficial piece of legislation that cuts down on waste, as opposed to a morally right one that benefits customers and individual repairmen?
There are institutions that have lobbied with me and testified with me that focus primarily on the environmental aspect of it. They don't focus on repair shop as a small business making money, or the consumer being able to fix it for cheaper. And what I've noticed is I'm either speaking to a legislator that cares or one that doesn't. If they don't care, it doesn't matter what I say. If they care, they accept every argument. So I mean, it really depends on whether I get someone that's playing with their phone when I'm submitting my testimony.
Awesome. We have time for one more question because I want to let Louis do whatever he wants to do after 7:30 o'clock at night. So I'll just take the last one. Actually, this one from Mamadou. Mamadou, if I'm pronouncing it. Yeah. Can Louis give us his view on e-waste? How does he see the right to repair fit into this topic? Lastly, does he think that it's enough to reduce the problem of e-waste? If no, what are other practical ideas does Louis think we should consider?
This actually ties into the question about people hoarding chips. So when I need to get that charging chip that I told you I can't get, what I do is I buy an iPhone XR charging case for about $120. It's one of those extended battery cases that makes your phone thicker and charges it. I buy that case for about $120. I remove the chip from it because they use that same charging chip in that phone case, and then I throw away the rest of it. So not only am I already, in a sense, hoarding because I'm buying something that a consumer would use for the purposes of repair, if repairing a laptop, I'm buying a phone case and then throwing it away, but I'm also creating more e-waste this way because I have to buy an entire device in order to get access to one chip. And once I remove that one chip from it, I've destroyed a lithium-ion battery, a PC board, a plastic casing. So I'm creating e-waste by doing repairs in the manner that I'm doing them, rather than just being able to go to the manufacturer and buy the chip.
Awesome. Louis, let's wrap up. As we wrap up, what are some of the key points or takeaways you would love the students, and I think we even have one or two faculty members from the City College of New York should take away from your time with us today?
I would say just think about what it is that got you excited enough to go to college for engineering and get you to do what you do, and just remember what that was like once you are working at a company and designing something that's going to be released, and just don't forget about what got you excited about this. Don't forget about what got you into this, because the change is going to happen slowly and culturally as the next generation starts to take these jobs and starts to work at these businesses and starts to design these products, and that's you have a lot more power than you think you do.
Awesome. That is great. That's great words to leave us with. So if everyone can please help me give a round of applause to Louis for his time today.
Thank you.
Louis could have been doing a million other things. He could have been fixing his laptop or his customers' laptops and devices, but he chose to spend this last hour with us. So Louis, thank you so much for your time. I know you're being stretched thin being pulled in a lot of different directions. But thank you for your leadership, as it relates to right to repair, and thank you for leaving us better than the way we came in today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to speak to your students and for the opportunity to just speak to someone who is not yesing me to death on everything I'm saying. I really appreciate it, and I learned something. Thank you. You have a good day.
No problem. All right. Thank you, Louis, and to everyone from CCNY. Thank you for participating, and hopefully we can do more of these, with other leaders in the near future. Thank you, everyone.